Welcome. I'm Dee, and this is the Unguided Life where I am taking it one day at a time, bring guys along for the journey to hold me accountable as I budget my way through life. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about my bankruptcy experience by coloring. I'm no expert, I'm not a professional. This is simply what I experienced during bankruptcy. I picked up this chart from debtfreecharts.com. It was free, of course. And so I just thought this would be a good layout and a segue into getting a little bit more about my financial history. So, first and foremost, I filed for bankruptcy in November of 2017. Prior to that, there was a couple of things I had to do. The first thing was I had to find a lawyer. I decided not to file by myself, but to get the assistance of a professional because it was a little bit more complicated than I would want to study to figure it out. So after I found that lawyer, the next thing is and I'm going to turn this around because it's easier for me to color this way. When I found that lawyer, I met with him. It was a free consultation, which was great. And then what he actually did was provided me with a packet to fill out. And his packet included information that he wanted in order to submit my case, such as my income. So I had to provide him my W-2s. I think I had to do 3 months of my W-2s. And then I had to provide my income tax returns and my bank statements. Also, I had to provide if I had any money owed to me, such as child support, which I did. So I had to provide that case information as well and that order information. So after that, that packet also included me filling out my creditors. So what I did in the best way that I know how is I went ahead and pulled up my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. And then I went to the first bureau and I decided to fill out all of the creditors' information. Then I went to the second one and then I decided to just compare. So if something was missing, I added it. And then I did that for the last one. And then I was done with my credit reports. The next thing I did was actually go through my mail, check any bills that had came in, and then updated that as well. When choosing to file bankruptcy, it wasn't a light decision. Actually, it was more of an emotional decision than it was financial. And I know money solves money problems. So how in the heck was I expecting this to solve my problems that I was having with my mental health? But I started to think about a couple things. How am I to help Papa if I don't help myself? And it's just like the same thing they said when you're on an airplane, you're to put on your oxygen mask first before you help others. And that was the case. I didn't grow up with any formal training when it came to finances. Most of what I learned was observations, and it wasn't the best ones, to tell you the truth. As you can see from many talks, I have a amount of student debt, and when everything's settled with my student loans, then we'll be able to talk more about that story. So when speaking with my lawyer, he understood where I was at, and I was happy about that because sometimes you find people who's just about the money, and my lawyer wasn't just about the money. Yes, he was providing a service and he wants to get paid, but he also was there many times where I felt like my head was underwater and there was no way, no one to save me. So after he filed, what happened, first thing was everyone who was calling me had to stop. So I actually deactivated my voicemail because I did not want anyone calling me because I knew I owed you, but I wasn't going to pay you. So Why are we wasting time? Go to somebody else who wants to pay you. So the intent to file was placed and the notices were sent out to all of the creditors and anyone who I was doing financial business with. So even the places I rent from had to get a notice to understand that they too fell underneath this law, and they had to be very, I would say, they would have to be careful on how they communicated with me in an effort to ensure that they receive their payments, you know? So I also had to do a credit counseling, and with that credit counseling, they just went over the same thing, the same information as far as my monthly bills, like what I'm doing now, budgeting, income. And then they came up with what they perceived was the best plan for me, which, to be quite honest, there was really no suggestions given to me. It seemed like it fell underneath the line of just making more money will maybe curb the financial issue going forward, but they wasn't providing me any type of help in regards to managing my money. So, to be quite honest, this process for me was definitely my time to learn about managing money because I wasn't going to get it nowhere else. So, my first court date was in December of 2017. I go before the judge. This is the person who's going to say yay or nay. If you're, and then they're going to look over the terms and make sure the terms is fair for all parties. So not just myself, but the creditors as well. The initial case contract included me paying a monthly $321, and it was for 3 years, but it was extended to 3 years and 1 month because there was a discrepancy with the amount that was claimed from one of my creditors. And so after verification, they had to adjust that amount, which is fine, because most of the information I input came from credit reports, which we all know that can be outdated, which it was outdated information. Because it was at least 30 days behind. So, and it took at least 60 days before this court date. So I stopped paying early on. So they, at this time, they still had time to be able to, quote unquote, claim their full amount to be included. So about the case itself is that I chose chapter 13 versus chapter 7 because of not having the money up front. I'm glad I chose 13 because I think 7, where I was at financially with my money mindset, would have put me back into the same financial ruin I was before. So I'm kind of glad that I did choose that. And if you're not familiar, chapter 13 is what they refer to as the wage earners plan. And its reason is because I have the finances to, or the income to pay back the creditors. So everything was going fine until 2020 when I needed some modifications. And the modifications was an item that was included in my bankruptcy was no longer there. So you can get a bigger picture. I'm going to talk about the numbers now. So there was 55 claims to my case. Of that 55 claims, they can be broken down into claims that actually will be paid in bankruptcy and claims that's are going to be paid outside or have been paid outside. So, for example, we have our priority claims, and that includes like student loans, taxes, fees, attorney fees, etc. Okay, those are the people who take priority over everyone else. Now, student loans are not dischargeable. Certain student loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. And most of mine wasn't dischargeable based on the fact that they were federally direct loans. I'm not 100% sure that the other portion of my student loans were dischargeable, because up until this point, I only thought I had federally direct loans. So when I talk about my student loan story, I'll get into that. So my student loans, my attorney fees, and my taxes were important. Okay. Now, as far as my state taxes, I was already on the plan when I filed bankruptcy. What happens is I still have to file every year, so I'm not exempt of filing. But what happens is if I owe, then they don't send notices out to tell you that you owe the taxes, your state taxes in my state. So you have to keep track of that, and you want to pay the principal, because if you pay the principal before the end of your case, before the discharge, then they will forgive all of the penalties and interest that you actually occurred during that time. So with the 55 claims, the total amount claimed, total amount I was on the hook for was $21,404.78. Of that, $4,991 was the attorney fees, which included the total amount for the case initially, which was $4,500, less what I had already paid prior to, so he can, file the motions and show up to court, etc. And the 2 modifications that came along with when Sylvia was in a car accident and my insurance carrier totaled her out. And Sylvia, she was included in the bankruptcy, so as well as another vehicle. So there was 2 vehicles. One was my primary vehicle, one was just in my name. I did a voluntary repossession for the one that was in my name so they can have it back. I didn't see myself taking time to fix up the internal part of the vehicle, because that's what was trash, in order to keep it. It just made a lot of sense to keep Sylvia, because I was already almost towards the end of my term with them. So when you place a vehicle in bankruptcy, the loan is reworked. So if you took out a loan for $12,000 for your vehicle at 10% interest, it needs to be reworked. And how it's reworked is you're actually only going to pay the value of the vehicle, and then the interest is usually calculated by whatever the market subprime rate is, and then the lender can add up to 3%. Yeah, 3%. Okay. So I don't know the interest. I just know interest was included. I do know that after Sylvia was in an accident with Papa, so that was like an emotional, train wreck for me, knowing that my son was in an accident. And when prior to getting there, how they were describing the car, it just made me straight nervous. So, but he was fine, shaken up. He didn't want to drive for the first few weeks by himself, and then he got over that little hump. But with Sylvia, it was valued at $6,000. So $6,000 was what I had to pay in my bankruptcy on a $9,416,000 claim. So that's how much they claimed. So if I didn't finish this bankruptcy or something happened, that's how much they were expecting to receive. In the bankruptcy, I only paid $4,522.05 prior to the car being totaled. The interest on that was $602.29. So what happened was, when I had the accident where the car was totaled, I had to get another one. I was still working and I needed to have transportation. So I had to ask permission from my trustee. So you're assigned a trustee to pay back your creditors that's listed in your case. And you have to ask permission to take on any new debt, because the point of the bankruptcy is to decrease the debt. So I had to ask permission, shop around. I felt at a disadvantage because I was in bankruptcy, so I knew my rate was going to be up there. So I wasn't like gigging on that, but it was like the fact of feeling that someone may want to take advantage of the situation. That's where I was at with it. So after finding the vehicle and getting the information from the finance company, I sent that information over to my trustee and they approved. And because they had to do all these modifications to go for the case, modifications to go for the not putting the new vehicle was paid outside of it, but getting permission to pay the car outside of the case. That brought on 2 additional charges from my attorney of $450 and $498, because they had to file paperwork and he had to show up. So all in total, it was these student loans that was included in the bankruptcy, so they're protected from collection, but they still are owed outside. Taxes, which was included but not dischargeable, so they were owed. That's why it was important for me to pay that when I did. Then we have the 2 cars. One was voluntarily repossessed, the other was paid on up until it was total. The last chunk of my bankruptcy was actually the medical collections, the medical bills, and my credit cards. And I think I had like close to 10 credit cards, store and major credit cards listed. And so what happens with them, like those types, they are considered unsecured. They have no collateral. And therefore, they're considered 1%ers, which means that no matter what the balance is, they will only get 1% of that balance. And the remaining is forgiven when I finish the case. Now, those are usually the last group that's actually paid. And so I didn't see who was getting what until towards the end. And to put it in perspective, the total dollar amount was $16,413.78. The amount that was actually paid out to that balance was $164.15. Okay, those are the 1%ers. Because again, that trustee has the responsibility of paying out, they have to be paid as well. So I paid $448.34 to the trustee. And lastly, the last chunk was the remainder of the case. It was like $4,500, I believe, total for filing a case, and each state is different. That's why you just have to be careful. Like, I'm not quoting. Each state in each case is different. So $4,500 for me at that present time to file. I provided a deposit, and the remaining balance was placed into the case, and so that would left a balance of $3,619. So in the beginning of my case, the only individuals that was actually getting paid was the trustee, the attorney, and then the car finance company. Then after the car was totaled inside of the bankruptcy, the next priority, or the highest priority, was the attorney. Starts paying the attorney fees and then the trustee fee each time they process the payment. So what was the total? So the total that I actually paid was $10,727.83. I was discharged in August 2021. So another thing to note is that initially it was 3 years and 1 month, but when I had to do those modifications, that extended it. But I knew that I wanted to finish this before Papa graduated high school, because I wanted to make sure I was available to him financially. And so that was like my biggest accomplishment. So my last payment was actually in June of 2021. But it does take a while to get onto the books and to file. And so I received my official discharge in August 2021. So this is my bankruptcy story. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down below. And share this to someone who feels like I was feeling initially, basically some embarrassment, because now I'm putting my life out there publicly to say I don't know how to manage my money. And then disappointment that I wasn't able to, help my son in the beginning, but everything works out always. And that's why I always give glory to God, because if it was not for him, it's a lot of situations I would have been sitting in and just going straight into my depressed mode. Yeah. I'm going to get a little choked up, but I'm so happy to have this chapter close. No pun intended. I'm so happy that it's closed so I can move on with my life financially. But I am thankful that it gave me time to get myself together financially, because if I did chapter 7, I'm sure that I would have been where I'm at when I got into chapter 7. Chapter 13 allowed for me time to adjust my money mindset, start budgeting, start saving. And though I'm not a natural saver, I know that that it's still a lot of work to do, but I've come so far. Peace out.